Hi everyone, my name is Veer van Harten from TU Delft University in the Netherlands, and today I'm going to present our paper called All Sorts of Other Reasons to Do It, explaining this persistence of suboptimal IoT security advice. And this work was done in collaboration with Carlos Hernandez-Genan, Michel van Eeten and Simon Parkin, also from TU Delft. So increasingly, smart devices become part of people's daily lives, such as smart cameras, smart thermostats, or smart speakers. However, these kind of devices have not a great reputation when it comes to security. So as a response, governments invest in public awareness campaigns to help consumers secure these devices. And the advice is oftentimes simple, or at least it sounds simple, such as use strong passwords. But what if following this kind of advice is impractical or even impossible? So the paper I'll be discussing today builds on our previous research, which highlights a significant issue. Offering general cybersecurity advice to consumers regarding IoT device security often turned out to be counterproductive. So we wanted to explore the applicability of 4 pieces of cybersecurity advice provided by 3 governments. In our case, these were the UK, the US, and the Netherlands. And the recommendations that they provide focus on essential security practices that you would also find on other kind of platforms, such as changing the default password with strong unique ones, avoiding password reuse, and installing updates or enabling automatic updates if available. So we then examined how these recommendations applied to 40 diverse popular IoT devices across 5 different product categories to ensure variety. And we found that not a single device in our study fully supported the application of all 4 pieces of advice. So at best, only 13 devices benefited from 2 of these security measures, mainly related to software updates. However, this was based on identifying at least one source among more than 1,300 sources that we reviewed that supported the application of the advice. So imagine the effort required from an everyday user. Through our analysis, we identified 2 main concerns, of which the first is that general advice fails to account for the immense variety of smart devices on the market. Variety not only in how they look and their functionality, but also what kind of security features they contain and where they are placed and how they should be applied. The second issue has to do with consumers being burdened with determining the advice relevance, implementation, and correctness, as well as its effectiveness. So benefits are not always clear or guaranteed. And this risks frustration, confusion, and even burnout, where people might even give up on security altogether. So, for example, we found with a smart TV that the default password was used for the parental controls. So a user that's not tech savvy might think that changing this password would strengthen its network security, but parental controls have nothing to do with network security, leaving this user feeling they're more secure than they actually are. So if the applicability of advice is often not guaranteed, why do these campaigns persist? And our follow-up study of this research investigates why this happens and why these campaigns continue despite their questionable effectiveness. So instead of focusing solely on whether the advice is helpful or harmful to users, we examined the institutional forces that shape and sustain it. And to do so, we spoke directly with those who design and promote IoT security advice. So we conducted interviews and a workshop with in total 14 stakeholders involved in the Dutch National IoT Security Awareness Campaign. On the slide, it says 13 participants, but of these 13, 8 participated in the workshop, of which 1 who wasn't interviewed also joined, bringing the total to 14. So these included government agencies, industry representatives, consumer advocacy groups, and regulators. In short, the people responsible for shaping, funding, and executing these campaigns. And our key research question is if these stakeholders agree or disagree with the quality problems that we observed in our previous study. And the second research question is about if they think that the campaigns based on these findings should be abandoned, changed, or continued as is. So the stakeholders acknowledge that IoT security advice is difficult to apply, but their responses reveal deeper institutional dynamics. So even though all participants recognize that much of the standard advice does not align with IoT device realities, Instead of addressing these gaps, they focused on refining the campaign or shifting responsibilities to future regulations. Despite recognizing the limitations, they saw no strong case for discontinuing or fundamentally redesigning the campaign to address the issues that we found. And this made us wonder why. And we found that the persistence of these campaigns is about more than just security. It's also driven by institutional incentives. And our analysis identified 5 key reasons why these campaigns persist, despite uncertainty about their effectiveness. And the first one is political expectations. So some of the stakeholders are expected to take visible action on cybersecurity, and that makes campaigns an attractive policy tool to do so. Then there are also legal obligations, where some stakeholders are mandated by law to provide security advice, regardless of its effectiveness. And I say regardless because the types of measurements they use mainly are about visibility, such as tracking the number of visitors on their website. Then there's also the feeling of moral responsibility, where stakeholders feel that providing advice, any advice, is better than saying nothing, even when presented with findings that its applicability is uncertain or even counterproductive. Then there's also the shift of burden to users, as I mentioned before, where they are a need to determine whether advice applies, whether it works, and if it actually leads to the promised security. And then there's also faith in future improvements. So many assume that regulations or industry's changes will eventually resolve these issues. So campaigns should continue in the meantime, is what they believe. And together these factors create a system where producing advice is seen as necessary, while verifying its usability and impact receives minimal attention. So rather than refining traditional advice campaigns, we propose alternative solutions that shift the focus from general advice to more tailored, actionable support for users. So emerging frameworks could provide user-friendly security checks, allowing non-experts to test their IT devices for vulnerabilities, thus without needing technical expertise. Similar to free opt-in passive scanning tools, these services could scan a user's home network, identifying risks and guiding users through relevant security improvements. So these approaches do not eliminate the burden on user, but they shift the focus from vague advice to direct device-specific security support. So to wrap up and understand better of why these campaigns persist, even when applicability of the advice is questionable, these awareness campaigns are not just about cybersecurity. They are also about institutional incentives. Advice givers operate in a system where providing cybersecurity advice is expected, even if its applicability is questionable. So instead of focusing only on awareness campaigns, we propose exploring new models of security support that reduce the burden on users and provide tailored advice for situations where user involvement is indispensable.